Could you imagine sending your child to school or saying goodbye to someone dear to your heart, never knowing if they'll return? Gun violence has become a growing issue in the United States due to the right for the mentally ill to legally own weapons. Good afternoon. I'm Edwin Padilla, and these are my co-presenters, Emma Kohler, Emily Gordon, and Joe Bazil. In order to put an end to gun violence initiated by the mentally ill, we must consider the solution of mental evaluations of citizens prior to them obtaining license to bear arms. Sandy Hook Promise, an advocacy group founded by the family members of the victims killed in the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting, have proven that knowing the signs of at-risk behaviors can reduce deaths caused by senseless use of guns. The Second Amendment states the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The right to bear arms is a civil right bestowed upon all Americans. According to a study done by Jeffrey W. Swanson, an accredited researcher, in 2014, 33,563 people were killed and 81,396 people were severely injured due to gun violence, and 5% of those individuals had brain deficiencies. Many laws and policies intended to reduce gun violence in the United States do not focus on preventing individuals who may be unfit to carry arms. An example of a provision that has been made within the United States in an attempt to control the distribution of firearms is the Gun Control Act of 1968. The Gun Control Act regulates the industry and owners of firearms. Swanson went on to say, "We live in an era where there are more mentally ill individuals in jails and prisons than were ever in hospitals. It is perhaps time to rethink some of the premises of the Gun Control Act restrictions pertaining to people with mental illness." According to political scientist Robert J. Spitzer, states have relaxed their laws regulating the carrying of concealed weapons, while states have expanded their laws to use guns defensively through standard ground laws. Rather than states relaxing their laws, they should increase the level of security in order to reach society's similar goal, ending gun violence one law at a time. Although increasing security does not promise that illegal distribution of firearms will occur, as you see in this map issued in 2014, states who have stricter gun laws experience less deaths than states who have relaxed gun laws. Louisiana has the highest average of gun-related deaths per year at 18.9, whilst New York has one of the lowest at 4.2. The stricter the gun laws are, the less deaths that occur in that particular state. Prior to restricting gun laws, it is important to understand what causes these mentally ill individuals to take part in mass gun violence.
As Edwin stated, for most Americans, owning a weapon is a way to ensure security and exercise their Second Amendment right. However, the mental well-being of an individual is not taken into consideration prior to one obtaining a weapon. The brain is the ultimate control center of the human body and regulates all physical, mental, and emotional processes. The most important part of the brain in relation to the regularity of combative behavior is the hippocampus. It is located in the temporal lobe and is responsible for regulating emotion and decision making. These emotions can consist of feelings of violence, hostility, and aggression. As a result of brain damage that affects the hippocampus, psychological deficiencies may arise. One common mental limitation in the United States is manic depressive illness, commonly known as bipolar disorder. Such deficiency arises when there is an imbalance in the brain stemming from traumatic events. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, also known as the NIMH, this brain disorder can lead to unusual shifts in mood, activity levels, and the inability to carry out day-to-day tasks. Under these circumstances, bipolar disorder can lead to depressive moods, which can leave someone thinking about death. In this photo, you can see the clear effects bipolar disorder has on the brain. The brain is clearly disrupted in the temporal lobe, which, as previously stated, is crucial in controlling emotions going from happiness to rage. Another common mental limitation in the United States is schizophrenia. According to the Annals of Internal Medicine, this brain deficiency arises when there is an imbalance in the level of the two neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin. Both are responsible for regulating motivated behavior. The NIMH continued to state that schizophrenia is a chronic and severe mental disorder that affects how a person thinks, feels, and behaves. As you can see, the brain of someone with schizophrenia is clearly disrupted due to the imbalance in neurotransmitters as compared to someone with a healthy brain. This then causes disruptions in major thought processes. Now, one may ask, why are all of these scientific and medical facts important to the epidemic of gun violence initiated by the mentally ill? Well, according to a study conducted in 2014 by research journalists from Newsweek, each year, about 42.5 million Americans suffer from mental illness. This is about 18.2% of our population. This means that about 18% of individuals are battling a psychological limitation, yet can still legally bear arms. For this reason, it is important that government officials finally acknowledge the need for mandated mental health treatment as an essential resolution to senseless gun violence. Medical advisors have in fact favored treatment as a crucial solution. For example, the Annals of Internal Medicine have stated medical treatment significantly reduces the risk for violence. Government officials may argue against this solution because mandated mental health treatment cannot be forced upon every single individual battling a psychological limitation. However, such treatment can allow the mentally ill to find ways to cope with their struggles prior to obtaining weapons without imposing on their Second Amendment right. With this being said, is it morally correct for the mentally ill to keep and bear arms?
When it comes to whether or not it is ethical for people with psychological deficiencies to own a gun, there are a multitude of factors involved. Let's take a look at a few examples of gun violence initiated by people with psychological deficiencies in the past 20 years. Most recently, there's the Sandy Hook shooting, where the lives of 20 children and 6 teachers were taken by Adam Lanza, for a total of 26 fatalities. As stated in a study by Allison Cohen from the New York Times, Lanza was not mentally fit to own a weapon, as he had shown signs of severe depression and anxiety. A similar event occurred in the Columbine massacre, where 2 students with signs of depression and anxiety released a series of shots within their school. The result? 13 killed, 20 injured before the students proceeded to take their own life. Had a law or background check restricted these people from causing mass damage, the lives of innocent children, students, and teachers could have been saved in the process. When you drop your child off at school, it probably rarely crosses your mind that they may not be returning home that day. The parents of the children in the Sandy Hook shooting had not expected to have said their last words to their children that morning. Could you imagine losing someone that you brought into this world, that shares your blood or last name, that you've had the honor to raise and the duty to protect, their life being taken by someone unfit to own a gun? It is hazardous for the Second Amendment right to legally bear arms to be extended to the mentally ill. Consequently, this puts the mentally limited individual and the people around them in great danger. As Janelli stated, gun laws do not specifically look into the mental well-being of an individual when questioning why mass shootings are becoming an epidemic. This extends beyond the lives of innocent people. As stated by accredited psychiatrist Dr. James Knoll, in 40% of shootings, the perpetrator ends up killing themselves too, while 60% are arrested or diagnosed with a mental illness. By regulating the use of guns to people with a mental illness, this goes beyond protecting ourselves and aims to protect the mentally ill as well. Some may disagree, saying that people with psychological deficiencies deserve the right to bear arms, especially by means of protecting themselves. However, and this goes for all people, not just those with mental illnesses, you can never be certain of what someone's true intent is when purchasing a gun. In order to minimize gun violence as a whole, as Edwin stated, we must start small and tackle that 5% by providing screening prior to allowing gun purchases to take place. In this process, while there is room for error, it is the step in the right direction in preventing gun violence without imposing on the Second Amendment right. Aside from the ethical reasons the mentally ill should not have access to weapons, what does this mean for the overall gun culture of society?
There are many ways in which culture and society influence the way that we think, behave, and interact with others. When making connections between the mentally ill and gun control, it is easy to see that culture has large impacts on the effects. As Janelli previously stated, the brain is heavily involved in the development of mental illnesses, and also culture is heavily involved in the development of the brain. As seen in these 2 Gallup polls taken from 2011 and 2013, it has shown that most Americans believe that mass shootings are more a result of a failure of the mental health system rather than issues related to gun control. Culture is deeply intertwined in the development of mental illnesses. One's culture influences the way that they manifest their symptoms, their ability to accept their diagnosis, their willingness to accept their treatment, and their support systems throughout the process. In the influence of culture and society on mental health, it states, ethnic and racial minorities in the United States face a social and economic environment of inequality that includes greater exposure to racism and discrimination and violence and poverty, all of which take a toll on mental health. These are examples of cultural determinants showing just how much culture influences the development of mental illnesses. According to Jeffrey W. Swanson, a researcher that Edwin previously mentioned, 13% of people who commit gun crimes are suffering from a mental illness. This percentage, though, is more reliant on whether the individual is living in a disadvantaged community, if they are abusing drugs and alcohol, or if they are from a low-income household. When these other factors are taken out of the picture, the percentage drops to 5%. Although this 5% may seem insignificant when compared to other perpetrators of gun violence, as Emily stated earlier, it is important to start somewhere with the solution. For most instances, the issues portrayed in the mentally ill aggressor can be traced back to their upbringing. By providing the correct care for those suffering from mental illnesses, these gun crime incidents can go down. One flaw in this is that some people neglect to recognize their illnesses as true problems. They are then considered normal and given access to guns without so much as a second thought. By providing extensive background checks and regular checkups on those who are hoping to be gun owners, there can be somewhat of a safety net around those who are gun owners with poor mental health. As stated earlier, it can be hard to diagnose when illnesses are not acknowledged or accepted, but with the help of testing and screening prior to gun ownership, these illnesses can be caught and treated before they do any serious damage. The solution to gun violence in America is in the hands of the people, and with hope, it can become something of the past. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just go down the line like we've been doing all day. We'll start with you, Janelli. Can you describe how the content of the team presentation was changed as a result of your group discussion?
Originally, when we were coming up with our question, we were going to talk about the Second Amendment right and gun violence, and we realized that gun violence with the Second Amendment right is just too broad. So Emma suggested that we narrow it down to the mentally ill in order to specify on a group of people and keep specified information within our presentation.
All right, thank you. All right. my caller. Reflecting on the colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
I would say that Edwin's research had the greatest impact on mine, considering that mine and Emily's research was more based off an appeal to emotion, whereas Edwin's was more about facts and really helped us solidify our argument.
Thank you. Emily, can you describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your team's solution?
When Janelle was discussing how many individuals don't get treated for psychological deficiencies, it really opened my eyes to the need to treat this problem, then I included into my argument by providing screening to all individuals prior to gun ownership taking place.
Okay. And Edwin, in what way did you improve your ability to work with a group as a result of this project?
Normally, I like to work alone because I'm very shy when I talk to some of my group members and stating my opinion, same as me and Emily, because our personalities are much more different than Janelle and Emma's. So when Janelle and Emma, their leadership personalities clash together, it was easier for me and Emily to become more comfortable with them, and as we got comfortable, our work ethic was much more beneficial to the presentation.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.